Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the Odyssey. And if you followed me on social media, you have probably seen that I'm hyping this one up a lot more than I hyped up the Iliad. Because honestly, I think it's a lot easier of a read, especially for people who are just kind of like getting into the novel. Well, the type of like literature. I don't know. It's a lot easier to read than the Iliad. That's all I've got to say. So I think Dr. Emily Wilson did a really great job translating this. So if you have not read her translation yet, please do, because it's such an easy read, especially if you just haven't read this type of like classic before. I think it's like the language of it is a lot more simplistic, whereas a lot of translators try to keep it as close as possible to the original text, and I think this one just makes it a lot easier. But we'll hype it up even more in the episode. So if you haven't read this book yet, please keep in mind that there is a lot of spoilers. So please read the book first and then come back and listen to the episode. But I don't have a whole lot of big announcements up here in the intro, besides the fact that on Friday we will have the Song of Achilles will be going on Patreon. So every single month we have an exclusive episode on Patreon. And this month I will be talking about the Song of Achilles with Jen from Best Book Club podcast. So if you want to check that out, please do, and check out our Patreon because there is a lot of good content out there. But without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are going to be discussing the Odyssey with Jade from About a Book podcast.
Hi! Happy to be back. We've just finished the Iliad.
I know, we say just, but it's also like for the listeners, it's been like a week, but for us, it's been like a couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
it's fun to dive back in.
Having good catch up. Right back to your favorite crossover. What's it called? Barely About a Book.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's pretty accurate because we talk about the book, but we also talk about a bunch of other crap as well. So
Wait, hear me out. About a Bookish.
yes.
What's the crossover name? What's the Bradgelina name of our podcast right now?
Barely About Books.
Barely Books. Barely
Books. Barely
Books.
Bookish.
We'll
work on
workshop
it.
that later. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
think about it later.
Like any
Listeners,
great ship name, like the listeners have to pick it, you know.
yeah, there you go. So just, ship us, tell us what our ship name is.
Do a poll on your
Brangelina it
Instagram.
is. Yeah, we'll make a new Instagram account. It'll just be our crossover episodes. Let us know. Remember like Sweet Life on Deck?
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana. That was
yes, there we
crazy.
go. I'm loving it. Amazing. Okay, so anyways, if you didn't listen to the Iliad episodes, first off, what are you doing? Second off, welcome to Jade and your podcast. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about your podcast?
Yes, so I'm about a book, and on my podcast I basically do what inspires a book to be made. So kind of talk about like maybe the history behind it or like what was going on in the author's life at the time. And I kind of do like a mini biography of the author, depending on how interesting they are. Then I do kind of like what inspires it, so maybe the history or what was going on when it was written. And then I do how it's like relevant today in pop culture. And I kind of recommend a few things you might enjoy if you like the book. So that's me.
Yes. And it's very, very good. So please check out your podcast. Well, her podcast for the listeners. And, all that good stuff. Because you just did Handmaid's Tale, which I say just did, but when the listeners listen to this, that'll be a while ago.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Time is a social construct. Anyways. So, we are going to be talking about the Emily Wilson translation of the Odyssey, which I have now decided is a superior translation, even though this is the only translation I've ever read. I don't think everything seems to pale in comparison to this.
Definitely, I agree, because
Like, in my
for
opinion.
school I had to read the Homer version and it was a slog to get through, like the Iliad, all the same criticisms, because if you've listened to the Iliad, we had a lot to say about it. But this
Mm-hmm.
version is a lot better, and it's quite interesting that it's like translated by a woman, Because remember we were saying like
Hmm.
last time about like how a man must have like translated the Iliad because he just like some bits didn't really translate over to make as much sense.
Yeah.
So it's interesting reading it
Yeah.
from, I guess, a woman's interpretation.
Plus, I feel like there was a lot of bias in mine. First of all, they used Roman gods, main problem. And then, second of all, there was a lot of Catholicism that seemed to have worked its way into the Iliad. Which, if you just want to hear my roast on the Iliad, please just go listen to the Iliad episodes. I'm not going to get too much into it here because we're talking about the Odyssey.
Our
But I
our
will
Troy
say,
episode is great as well when we
oh, yeah.
critiqued the movie. That was really good
Oh,
fun.
yeah. Please listen to that. That is very good. I did find out that there's a Trojan War movie or series on Netflix, which now I'm gonna have to watch. And I think I'll just never escape the Trojan War at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much on the Trojan War. Like just the amount of different adaptations and everything they've made, you never be able to make your way all the way through it.
I know. I'm like trying to plan out the Patreon episodes for this. And I'm like, how I'm trying to just do the popular ones, but I'm like, I could really deep dive into the Trojan War. Like someone could make a whole Trojan War podcast.
For your like Patreon or something, you should rank all of the Trojan War adaptations from like best to worst.
Ooh, that would be fun. Yeah, I probably could do that. As soon as I get through them all, we'll do that. Um, the first thing I want to talk about with this book is the fact that we finally get a map. Like that was my biggest criticism with the Iliad is I could not figure out how far away
Yeah.
Achilles was from the entire fight, you know what I mean? But now we get a map.
And when they have a map in a book, it just gets me really excited for some reason.
Hmm.
I always geek out looking at it, so that was a nice
Yeah.
touch.
And we don't just get one map. We get multiple maps.
Yeah, because there's a lot of traveling in this book. Like
Hmm.
Odysseus goes like all the way around.
Yeah, and plus we get a lot of in my brain, I've been calling him like Telemachus.
Telemachus, yeah.
Telemachus. Yeah, he travels around a lot as well, so I'm excited to explore that a little bit.
Yeah, actually today we're doing the first 4 books, aren't we?
Hmm.
Yeah, and they're called the Telemachy. And that's basically like because the first 4 books are like just focused on him and it's like his journey. So
Hmm.
I like it. It's kind of like a mini YA book, like in the
Yeah.
Odyssey, because
Hmm.
it's just all focused on him and his journey. Because at the start he's 10 years old, and then by the end of the book he's 20. So the first 4 books are kind of like him becoming a man. So it's very like coming of age YA, and
Oh,
I love it.
adorable. Love this. I also one thing I really want to say before we even get into the book is I like that um Emily Wilson made the choice to keep, I guess it's actually Dr. Emily Wilson. I looked her up on Twitter. So Dr. Emily Wilson um, made the choice to keep with the poetic form because I had always thought the Iliad was like a poetic style,
Yeah.
but the way it was written in my translation is they changed it to make it more of a narrative form.
Yeah, no, it was like this and the Iliad were like written like a poem, because remember how we were saying it was originally like just kind of a spoken word. So they
Hmm.
had to kind of make it poetic so that they could remember it. There had to be some
Yeah,
rhythm and some rhyme to it. Um, that's what I'm gonna be now, professional bard. My new job.
love
Um,
it.
but yeah, so it's way nicer even just reading it in the poetic form. I'm
Hmm.
sure like in the original language it sounds like even better. But yeah, I just like reading it. It's something different.
Yeah, and I think it breaks up the rating as well because I feel like when we were reading the Iliad, it kind of dragged a bit because it
Definitely.
wasn't broken up in like the spoken word which it would have been originally told, and because this is that way it makes it a lot easier on the eyes and like a
Yeah.
lot more fun to read. But I can talk about just the general book forever, so we're just going to actually get into the content, the meat of the story. So book one, The Boy and the Goddess. First off, love the chapter titles, book titles, whatever. I already think they're like really enchanting.
Yeah. It seems like a proper like epic, you know? I know it isn't
Mhm.
epic, but it really does sound like a big kinda journey, you know? Like, very kinda
Yeah.
cinematic. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes, for sure. So our narrator focuses us on an unnamed character who is at the Battle of Troy. We don't really get immediately who that character is, but they say that everyone is able to sail home except one man who is trapped by Calypso. This man was stuck with Calypso for a year until the gods intervened. So it kind of is just trying to set us into the narrative right away, which I like.
Yeah, it's kinda giving us, like, spoilers for what will happen
Hmm.
because it's like, "Oh, he's stuck on this island, he travels here, he travels there." So it's kind of giving us the whole story at the very start,
Yeah,
which is interesting because I guess, like, back in the day, they wanted to, like, intrigue people and make them stay for the ride, you know?
yeah.
And I think it's also kinda cool too that the book, like, opens with the narrator, like, calling on the muses to, like, help him tell the
Hmm.
story. I think it's very
Yes,
magical, you know?
I know. I really think that honestly, I would love for someone to read this to me. Like, I know audiobooks exist, but I want to be like sitting around a campfire hearing one of these books every night. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let me roast s'mores to this, please.
I think it'd be really exciting back in the day, like, returning to I mean, I don't know if they had back then, like, a tavern or the campfire, like,
Mhm.
every night to hear, like, the next installments of the story. I think it's just really magical.
I want somewhere like I want to go to a Ren fair in costume and hear someone like tell a book of the Odyssey. Like this translation specifically, but I want to be like at a campfire dressed in Ren fair attire. I've never been to a Renaissance
Me
festival,
neither.
but I feel like this is the perfect vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now we are finally told that it is Odysseus that is kind of our main character. And they make sure to like hammer in that he's friendless and that Poseidon hates him.
Oh, yes, this is a theme throughout the whole Odyssey. Poseidon just hates Odysseus. You'll learn why, like in the book, but he hates Odysseus, so he makes it his mission to prevent Odysseus from coming home and just doing
Mhm.
whatever he can to disrupt his journey. So it's great. It's very entertaining.
Yes, I honestly love getting the gods playing an active role in this story again. Like, I know we kind of talked about it in our Troy movie watching, but I missed the gods playing this much of a role. And then in the Song of Achilles, we get a lot of Thetis, but we don't get as much of the gods actively in the story.
Yeah. So there's a lot more god action in this and a lot more like gods actually interacting with humans.
Hmm.
Because I feel like in the Iliad, it was mostly like the gods up in the sky talking
Hmm.
amongst themselves and then like kind of like putting actions on the earth. But in this, they're like really communicating with people. And there's actually a lot more female characters in this book too, which I appreciate.
Yes, I know. We get a lot more diversity. No, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
Is that the word I'm looking
yeah,
for?
I guess it would be. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, because I feel like in the Iliad, I don't know if it's because of the translations that we read or what it was, but I feel like it was more just like bloodshed and less plot.
Definitely. Yeah, I think this is a better sequel for sure.
Yeah, I'm loving this a lot more than I like the Iliad already.
Yeah,
Like it
if
was actually entertaining to read.
yeah,
So,
for anybody who's listening that didn't enjoy the Iliad, give the Odyssey a go because it's probably what
mhm.
you're expecting the Iliad to be like.
I did find out that because I saw this on Dr. Emily Wilson's Twitter that she's actually going to be translating the Iliad, and I might give that another reread
Ooh,
once
that's
that translation comes out and let you all know.
yeah, you definitely should because I'm
Yeah.
really impressed with this one so far.
But yeah, so she's done a bunch of translations of I don't know if it's like specifically Greek books, but she's got more um books as well. So if you go to her website, if you just search up Emily Wilson The Odyssey, you'll see more of the books that they've done.
You're a proper fangirl now.
I
looking up,
am.
looking up her Twitter, looking up her books, what she's doing next.
Well, because I was like, this book was like, honestly, I was so intrigued by it that I was like, I will read more of her translations because I guess she is a teacher, so she kind of wanted to make this more accessible in the classroom, from my
Mm.
understanding. And so I was like, I am definitely going to be reading more of her translations because, like, this podcast is kind of about me reading these for the first time. And so, because I don't have anyone teaching me through them, if
Yeah.
that makes sense, then it's harder for me to read like these types of classics. So, the more accessible I can get them, the better.
Yeah. You should definitely read who was it? Seamus Heaney's Beowulf like translation as well.
That's on
That's
my
supposed to
list.
be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want that one as well. And I'm very excited to hopefully read that at some point. But honestly, the more accessible I can get the book, the happier I'm going to be because I was dying reading the Iliad and I honestly read this so quickly. I was actually shocked.
Yeah. Me too.
Anyways, back to the story. So, all of the gods except Poseidon are at Mount Olympus right now, and they're kind of recapping the Trojan War for us. It kind of felt like they, when you read like the third book in a series and they're like not super sure if you remember what happened in the first one, so
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, my friend who, if you remember, was the one who killed the big bad in book one. Yeah, that guy. And you're like, oh yeah, he did do that. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, I like that
They ca-
this
they catch you up.
recapped it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because this book is set 10 years after the Trojan War.
Mhm.
I don't know how long it came out after the Iliad, but yeah, they probably needed a recap anyways.
Yeah, for sure. But I really liked that was included in this. So apparently, after the Iliad, um, Agathis is how I've been saying it. Took Agamemnon's wife, killed Agamemnon, and then Agamemnon's kid grew up and killed Agathis. And I was like, wow, okay, just throw that out there for us. Like,
Yeah.
awesome. Love that for, Agamemnon's kid. Every time I see the name Calypso, all I can think about is Calypso from Pirates of the Caribbean.
I always think of the drink Calypso. I don't know if they have those in America, but they're crazy flavors. Like you can get like a big bright blue one and it's like tropical themed. It probably is named after Calypso, but that's what
Probably.
I just think of. Or there's
I haven't
also
had them.
there's really popular like Irish I don't know what you call it. We call them like ice pops or like ice lollies. And it's like
Mm.
orange flavored and it's called a Clippo. And that's how like we were taught in school to remember Calypso because it's like a
Oh.
Clippo.
Hmm. Yeah, we call them popsicles,
Ah,
I
okay.
think. But yeah, I'm not saying we don't have them. I'm just saying I've never had them, like the
Yeah.
drink or the popsicle. So I'm not sure. Maybe we have them. I just might have never had one. But yeah, my familiarity with Calypso is solely Pirates of the Caribbean. So,
I've never seen Pirates of the Caribbean.
oh really?
No, yeah, I
Hold
don't know
on.
why.
I'm gonna send you a picture of Calypso and Pirates of the Caribbean so you can get my visual.
Is she pretty? Sounds like a pretty
I
name.
think so.
Because Calypso in this, she's wild. She just holds Odysseus as she basically holds him captive for like, I think it's 10 years.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, there's Calypso. I think she's just cool looking. I don't think she's like what you would call
Let me see.
um like normally pretty, but I think she's cool.
Oh, she's cool. She
Yeah.
looks badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
She's from, if you've probably seen on TikTok, the sound of Jack Sparrow being like, "This is a jar of dirt," and she's like, "If you don't want it,
Yeah.
give it back." That's Calypso.
Ah, okay, okay. But yeah,
Anyways.
Calypso in this is great too. You know, she is problematic holding Odysseus against as well as like her boyfriend, but
Mhm.
also he seems okay with it, you know. He
Yeah. I mean, like, from my understanding of Calypso, which I honestly can't even remember where I remember this from. Like, I've consumed a lot of Greek mythology to the point where I don't really remember the source anymore. But like, I feel like I remember Atlas as a dad being really problematic.
Yeah.
And so Calypso grew up not really understanding love. And
Yeah.
so, like, I think my understanding is that she thinks that this is actually how you get a husband, is you just hold them captive.
That's very insightful because I'm just like, oh yeah, all the gods are problematic in their own ways and they're
Mhm.
just causing chaos. But that is a lot more emotional of an answer.
Yeah, I mean,
But
like, I kind of like to look at like why they make the characters that way.
yeah,
You know, like
that makes sense.
what is the source of it? Because like people aren't just problematic for the fun of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Well,
feel like
sometimes
that's
in
kind of
books they
funny.
are just for the drama,
Yeah,
but
true, true, true.
but yeah, in this, like she seems to be holding Odysseus captive, but then also it's kind of like a theme throughout the book of like, oh no, I'm stuck here. I guess I'll just procrastinate going home,
Hmm.
that type of thing. Um, but yeah, anyway, continue.
You're fine. I am interested to see once we get more to Odysseus' point of view if there's a reason why he's not coming home. Because I mean, like,
He's horny,
it's
basically. That's basically.
yeah. I mean, because
the-
I feel like if you really want to get home, there's ways you can do it. You know what I mean? Like you're. I'm not saying that like people trapped on islands. I'm saying in this book specifically, it seems like you can just sacrifice enough lambs and you're gonna get wherever you want to go.
Yeah, true, true.
So, anyways, back to the book. Calypso is a goddess and she's Atlas's kid. Athena, while they're all having this like lunch of the gods, brings up how she starts to feel really bad for Odysseus because he can't escape. And she's like, he's been there a long time, you know, like he was really good to us in the Trojan War, and now he's just stuck on this island and can't get home.
This is like another theme as well. I can't remember if there's like a proper term for it or like what, but basically Athena has extreme favoritism towards Odysseus. I think it might be, I'm not sure if it is properly his mom. I don't know if she's just like a
Mhm.
mother figure or if she actually is his mom. I don't think he's a demigod, but so I think it's just kind of like a motherly figure, but she like really wants to protect him and she always wants to help him. So you kind of see her getting in all of this like conflict with Poseidon, who's trying to prevent him going home, and then Athena, who's like trying to get him home.
If I had to pick a god to have on my side, I feel like Athena is a really good choice.
Yeah, because she is the goddess of wisdom, so she does have
Hmm.
that kind of motherly wisdom. Or else maybe Zeus, since he's just like the Mac Daddy, you know what
I
I
would,
mean? The boss.
yeah, I
So
would never want to be on Zeus's bad side. Like, I go on planes a lot. So, you know, like I feel like I could get away with never being on a boat again. Like I live in Florida, so you know, not being around the water would be difficult, but like I could never get on a boat again very easily.
yeah, me
And
too.
so like if Poseidon was mad at me, I feel like I could live with it. But
Yeah.
like I go on planes all the time. If I had to drive, like I think for all the listeners who've read Percy Jackson, I've only read the first series. I've still got I think it's Trials of Apollo. No, Heroes of Olympus are next. I've got Heroes of Olympus I still need to read. And so I'm just thinking about how Percy can't go on an airplane because uh he's Poseidon's kid.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that would be very difficult for me. I
Yeah, me
travel a
too.
lot.
I agree. I agree. I would definitely choose rather Zeus be on my side.
Yeah.
But
If I had to pick one.
I guess back then, since especially since Odysseus is on islands, it's like absolutely crucial that he gets a vote. So
Yeah.
not good for him.
Yeah, no. For our man Odysseus, having Poseidon be mad at you is not the best thing that could happen in your life. Planes were not invented yet.
Fun fact of the day, planes were not invented in ancient Greece.
Strange, I know. Everyone's astounded. So apparently, what we find out is that Odysseus hurt Poseidon's kid's eye, which is bad because his kid is a cyclops.
Yeah, and the way he tricks him is just really funny as well. This book is great because it does have like the YA beginning with like
Mhm.
Telemachus's like journey to hear about his dad, and then you have like kind of the comedy between the gods, and you've got like a lot of romance drama, and then a lot of
Mhm.
like bromance. It's great. It has everything. But the him with the Cyclops is like a funny moment in the book for sure.
Yes, I know. I love it. So Athena gets a whole plan together, to get Odysseus home, and then immediately is like, as soon as she like talks about the plan, she runs off to go to see Odysseus's kid. So the son has like a bunch of slaves, which is problematic, and it's, I mean, it's ancient Greece, so I'm not surprised, but that is brought up a lot in this
Yeah.
book to kind of show that, like, listen, they're not the best.
And I guess just as well that how like I guess well, I don't know, dependent they are. Like he's not really like a
Mm-hmm.
man yet, so he can't really like take care of himself or like take care of his mom. So they have like all of these
Yeah.
slaves to compensate for that.
I also think, like, while we kind of romanticize ancient Greece a lot, I think it is important to realize that they were still problematic, in
For
their own
sure.
ways.
Yeah.
They also talk about how there's a bunch of suitors hanging out at Telemachus's house. Like, they're trying to get to his mom because his mom is like the queen now. Um, and obviously Odysseus isn't around, so they're like, hey, maybe we can get her to, marry one of us. And I'm like, wow, don't let her mourn her husband at all, I guess.
Penelope is a great character because she's really like cunning, like her
Mm-hmm.
husband. And she's also like very loyal to him. I feel like I'm sounding very like essay-ish because I'm just remembering everything I learned like in school for the essays, but she's very loyal to her husband, even though
Mm-hmm.
the Trojan War ended 10 years ago and he's just like chilling on some island. But she doesn't want to go near any of these 10 suitors that are in her house. And the suitors have totally taken over the house. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
wrecking stuff, eating all the food, like making themselves way too at home. And Penelope is like making this I guess it's kind of like a shawl or like a blanket. And
Mm-hmm.
the suitors keep trying to propose to her. And she's like, oh, I'll marry one of you once I'm finished making this shawl. And then
Mm-hmm.
at nighttime she just unravels it all so that she never actually has to marry any of them. So
Mm-hmm.
she's very wise.
I know,
I think
I love Penelope so much.
she's great.
And I think it's like a very different um viewpoint too from the Iliad. Like, in the Iliad, it seems like their wives were more just the property, and I don't know if that's like a translation bias or what, but it was very much, this is just my person, like, she's got no say in anything. And then this, it looks like, she still has to accept a suitor at the end of the day. Like, while she doesn't really have much of a choice, like, she can't be a single woman and these men are still harassing her, she still gets the option to pick one, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Whereas it felt like more in the Iliad that the women were just property and they didn't get a choice in anything. So I like this idea more.
Yeah, whereas this, she seems to have like more personality and she kind of like
Hmm.
stands up for herself, being like, "Oh yeah, I will," and then she kind of has this little secret. So she's a like very developed character, I think.
Hmm. And I do like that she has more speaking lines as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So Odysseus's kid cannot get these men to leave the house, and he's starting to think that his father must be dead, and he's really distraught about this. So then Athena shows up, makes up a whole story about who she is and how she knows of father Odysseus.
And it's strange because when Odysseus left for the war, like Telemachus was
Mhm.
only a baby, but now he's like 10 years old. So it's
Yeah.
like what we were saying in the Iliad, like once a father goes off to war, they're just like never coming home to their family. Like their family's going to be completely different if they ever return.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then, yeah, Athena feels like a sense of duty to kind of like take care of Telemachus since like she loves his dad so much. So then
Hmm.
she comes down. I can't remember what the word is, but it's when the gods come down in the shape of a person, and she kind of comes down looking like one of Odysseus's old friends, and like convinces her son that she knows him that way, and she kind of tells him that his mission is to go off to these two different kings and find out what happened to his dad.
Hmm. My favorite thing though is that Athena cannot keep this up, like her form at all. So she constantly like reveals herself. She's like, nobody's gonna know. How
Yeah.
would they know? And then she like turns into a bird and runs away. She's like, Okay, bye. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Athena, everybody knows. And I just love that, like, Telemachus was like, "Oh my gosh, I was visited by a god, how cool." And then, like, Athena's like, "Yeah, they'll never know, it's fine, don't worry
Yeah,
about it."
no, no, I'm your dad's friend, I swear.
Yeah, I swear. Like, don't ask how I know all this important details. Anyways, moving on. I love that so much. And then it sounds like, Penelope does not want to remarry at all, and she's still really mourning Odysseus because at this point, where we are in the story, it's been about 4 years that these suitors have been trying to uh, marry her, and
Mhm.
she's like, I'm not gonna deal with this. Uh, so then Telemachus tells the suitors they need to get out, and one of them tries to like curse him and says that Zeus is gonna like smite him, and he's like, this is literally my house. You are throwing my fortune away. My inheritance is gone. You're eating all of our animals and you're drinking all of our wine. Please leave.
Yeah, this is
I
like this is like the first sign we see that he's like becoming a man because he's like
mhm,
finally actually like sticking up for his mom and like defending his household, like being kind of like the man of the house.
mhm.
Yeah. So he does try, it's not very successful, but he does try. So that's to be applauded.
I just feel bad that like Penelope has this infant child she's had to raise on her own while her husband's at war. And then like she finally raises a kid, the war's ending. She's like, awesome, my husband's gonna come home. I'm finally gonna see him again. And now she's got like suitors at her door that she can't get rid of. Her family's falling apart. She doesn't know if her husband's alive or dead or where he is. And she's just having to go through all of this while like not being able to defend herself.
I like wonder about being like in the army back then. If they win the war or if they go off and they fight for 10 years, do they get, like, paid? Or, like, do they just get paid in honor, or do they get, like, a good sum of money that they can bring home to their family? Like, when Odysseus comes back, spoiler, is
Mhm.
his family going to have money or just be bad off after all this time?
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to like get spoils of war, you know? And like we saw with Achilles, he was getting like a little bit of riches, and we kind of see this with Menelaus. But I feel like with Odysseus, he lost his all of his ships that had all of his trophy and all of his men and everything. Like so he was supposed to come home with riches.
If my
I,
husband left for war and then came back 10 years later and he didn't even have any money, he didn't even have what he went out to get, I'd be like, are you
yeah.
kidding? Are you kidding? I raised your son all on my own. I've been loyal to you for 10 years.
Mhm.
You're back and now I've got to take care of you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's also the king of his area, so I'm assuming like his people pay taxes or something.
Oh, very true. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
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 It's like everybody that's going that we are listening to are kings of some sort. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So I feel like they don't really need the spoils of war. Or you
true.
can be like, hey, friends, give me some money, please. Thank you. So then we're on to book two, A Dangerous Journey. Telemachus calls the council of Ithaca into session. He says that the suitors are driving him to poverty and they should be ashamed of themselves. And then, one of the suitors steps up and like victim blames himself. And he's like, or victim blames, and it's like, well, Penelope said that she would marry someone when she was done weaving, but we found out she's unweaving her progress every night. She just needs to pick somebody. And you're making us out to seem like the bad guys. And I'm like, because you are. What? So Zeus backs up Telemachus by sending eagles as a sign and like scratches all the suitors on the face. And the suitors are
Ugh.
like, that wasn't very clear. Anyways, so the suitors will not leave because they are absolute trash bags. And then Athena comes again and it's like, listen, all these suitors, they're gonna die. Don't even worry about it. Like, we love the lack of like subtlety of Athena.
Yeah, or in this book in general, like if you're reading this book or if you're hearing it back in ye old times or whatever, like you're
Hmm.
getting all of the spoilers up front. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I feel like sometimes when I listen to like not when I listen, but when I read this, I'm thinking about like Athena as being like the juicy gossip, you
Yeah,
know?
I feel
So
like she
like she's
definitely has a
like,
big mouth, like, she can't keep anything quiet.
I know, but I'm imagining it being like, listen, you didn't hear this from me, but I heard that like they're just all gonna die. Don't even worry about it. Like, I'm not gonna tell you who. It's gonna be Zeus. Not gonna tell you who. That's how I'm imagining her telling Telemachus all these things.
Yeah, for sure. She's great, like, I feel like she just has such a clear personality.
Hmm. I know. I love Athena. So Telemachus and Athena come up with this whole plan, and Telemachus ends up sneaking out at night after Athena puts all of the suitors to sleep and then boards the ship to go search for his father.
How is he even gonna know what his father looks like if he's, like, never seen him?
I know,
Because
at this
if
point,
you think about it, they didn't even have, like, photos or anything back
mhm,
then. I guess everyone will know who his father is since he is, like, a king, but it's just
yeah.
funny.
I also think it's interesting because, there's a lot of talk where Telemachus isn't even sure that this is his real father,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's kind of interesting because we aren't led to believe that Penelope like cheated on Odysseus at all, but because Telemachus has never seen his father, there's still this like wave of doubt where he's like unsure whether this is actually his father or not. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like the book definitely has like that emotional element to it, like in that very kind of like YA-esque kind of, he does seem kind of like a regular teenager, in that
Hmm.
sense. Like there's loads of YA books where people, go off in search of their parents and that type of thing.
The Odyssey, a coming of age story.
Yeah,
So then we're on to book three, An Old King Remembers. So Telemachus arrives in Pylos
yeah.
and goes to Nestor and he's like, hey, have you heard of Odysseus? Which I love. And another thing is Athena is just straight up hanging out on this trip. Like she is pretending to be somebody else and is just sailing with them. And it's like, yeah, casual, as you do. Telemachus asks if Nestor saw Odysseus die, and he's like, please do not hide the truth from me. Like, I need to know. And so Nestor just recounts the whole story of Troy. We find out that Achilles died in this moment and kind of lists off a lot of the people who he did see die. And then he starts telling the story about wrapping up to leave for Troy. And he's like, there was a lot of infighting about whether or not we need to make sacrifices or if we should head back home after the Battle of Troy. And they ended up leaving Agamemnon there because Agamemnon didn't want to go home yet. And Nestor's like, listen, I'm ready to go. Like, I don't want to hang out here anymore. I want to see my family. So there was a lot of infighting. And they said that like the gods basically cursed their trip back home, which the amount of times that Nestor's like, yeah, the gods cursed this, blah, 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 like Athena's against us. And Athena's just standing right there. I'm like, you're going to get smited, you know?
I feel like back then it'd be so easy to blame like stuff on the gods. I think
Hmm.
there's like a line of that. I think I actually highlighted it, but back in the day, you could just like blame all of your bad luck or all of your like sorrow on the gods. Let me find
Hmm.
the quote that I underlined because oh yeah, it says, "This is absurd that mortals blame the gods. They say we cause their suffering, but they themselves increase it by folly." So I feel like
Yes.
I think that was a really good quote. But
Hmm.
yeah, they just blame everything on the gods. I feel like if this was like nowadays, you get invited to a party and you're like, you don't want to go. You'd be like, "Oh, sorry guys, I'm cursed. I can't go."
Yeah. I think it's definitely very interesting, but it's also the like amount of casualty they talk, not casualty, like how casual they talk about the gods in this kind of shocks me because like in modern day religions, we don't talk about our deities this way, you know?
Yeah, like I mean, some like very radical people do, but it wouldn't just be like, "Oh yeah, God just told me that like this is happening or whatever," or
Yeah.
like, "Oh, God told me that you're gonna get bad luck next week." You know what I mean? But they
Yeah.
talk about the gods so casually in this.
Or if they're like, yeah, Jesus decided to just, come down and ruin my life. Like, if we talk that way, like, a lot of people who follow like Catholicism or Christianity would probably feel like they're going to get smited.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like they're very critical of the gods back then, or they can be
Hmm.
angry at the gods, but like now if you're saying like, oh, Jesus is ruining my life, oh, like God's mad at me or something, people
Hmm.
would be like, oh no, God's perfect, like he would never be mad at you and all this type of
Yeah.
stuff.
Plus, it's like you would be probably yelled at for talking negatively.
Yeah. I
So I
feel
think it's.
I feel like I prefer their way of stuff. I just think it's more what was this? More like entertaining, and also I guess like more kind of realistic that like the gods would be interacting so much with you on like a
Hmm.
personal level.
Yeah. Plus, I like the idea that you can be critical of something and still worship it.
Exactly, that is a really good
You know,
point.
like literature, you can be critical of it and still enjoy it, and I like that idea more.
Bring back the Greek gods. I'm gonna start a
Yes,
church as for the Greek gods.
that's called paganism, my friend. Oh, so Telemachus says that he's not sure the gods will save Odysseus because, he's like, he's going through a lot, and I'm not sure that the gods will, even if he's still in their favor, that they'll be able to intervene. And Athena's just like, bro, what? Like, I like that, because the gods are such an active player in this, that there's a lot more interaction between everybody, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, I agree.
I just like that Telemachus literally knows he was visited by Athena and he's not watching what he says anymore. And I think that's funny.
Yeah, it's so normal. It's just like a
Hmm.
relative is with him rather than like an actual god of the universe.
Yep. Like he could literally, Athena on a whim could ruin his life. And
He
he's
has no
like,
fear.
yeah.
No
He's
fear.
like, whatever. Like it just really kind of shows his like lack of awareness of the world in a way. Like his like how naive he is, you know what I mean? So apparently Agamemnon's wife was left at home, and at first she had refused Agathus's advances, but after time she went to him willingly. Like, I get it. Your husband's been gone for like 10 years at this point. Most people, if your husband's been gone that long and you have no way to communicate with him at all,
They're basically dead, like.
yeah, you're basically divorced. At that point, she should be allowed to choose whether she wants to continue that marriage or not, because that's a long time. A lot has happened in, 10 years,
Mhm.
where once they get back, they don't really know you anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you basically have to get remarried at that point because you have to relearn each other.
Mhm.
So I really don't blame Agamemnon's wife at this point. That's a really hard test for her to decide if she still wants to be with him after, not hearing and not seeing from her husband in 10 years. Like, that's lonely.
Yeah, she just has to trust that like he will come home and that he wants to come home, you
Hmm.
know? Because
Yeah.
for all like she knows, he could be like off with a different wife or something.
Hmm. Which he kind of did.
Yeah.
So it's fair. And I can't blame her when someone's trying to show her attention and she hasn't been receiving any.
Mhm.
I mean, I get it. That we kind of just get caught up a little bit about that whole situation. And then Nestor's like, listen, go talk to Menelaus because he was the last to return. And if anybody knows anything about your dad, he would know. So Nestor sends him over, or Nestor has him sleep there with him that night. And then in the morning, sends him over. So then, Athena absolutely blows her cover again, leaves in the shape of a bird. Like, I don't know how she doesn't think anybody would notice. And then after that, they all make sacrifices to Athena because they're like, oh, she's like blessing this trip. That's so nice of her. Here's some sacrifices for you.
Yeah, I wonder like with the sacrifices, like I was just like, oh yeah, cool. Or like, you know what I mean? Like, does it do
Hmm.
anything for them or is it just like a nice gesture? Like getting like a card or something.
I don't, I don't know. I, hmm. I feel like it has to serve some sort of purpose. Like, there's been a lot of different ideas about, like, in literature, why there's sacrifices or why there's people that need to follow religions. And I think I kind of lean towards the idea where the only way they can remain in power is if people believe in them. So,
Mm,
like, this is shown as like an act of worship, which fuels them having power.
okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, I
So
like that idea because otherwise I feel like you're wasting things. And I don't like the idea of waste.
yeah, 'cause that's what I was thinking. Like, say,
Hmm.
if they like slaughter a lamb or something, it's like, is that like lamb meat gonna go to like waste, or do they like eat it, or like all that type of stuff,
Well,
or is it just a gesture?
they burn specific parts to, like, as a sacrifice to the gods, and then I think they get to eat the rest of it. But I want to think that that's what fuels them, and like it gives them a little bit of a power up, so that then they can help um Telemachus. Otherwise, like, I don't want to believe that it just wasted, like that it serves no real purpose, because then the gods wouldn't be so spiteful when they don't get sacrifices, in my
Yeah.
opinion. It's like, if that's the source of your power, you're gonna want people to definitely make those. So, like, punishing people who don't does actually serve a purpose.
Hmm. True.
So, I mean, obviously, I have no idea how the world works or anything like that, and it's just like what I want to
No, that
believe.
makes sense. That makes sense.
So then we're on to book 4, What the Sea God Said. Nestor's kid and Telemachus show up to a wedding party, which I love. I love the idea that they're just wedding crashers, and they're like, "Hey, can we talk to you?" And then he's like, "My kid literally just got married." He's like, "This is important." So Menelaus talks about how he was trapped at sea for 8 years. So not only was he the Trojan War going on for like 10 years, he then got trapped at sea for an additional 8.
Nightmare fuel. Honestly, getting
Yeah.
trapped at sea for 8 years.
Yeah. When it didn't take them that long to sail over.
Yeah.
We also find out that Helen is back with Menelaus, which, is the entire reason for the Trojan War.
Back to square one, back where it
Yeah.
started.
Yeah. So she talks about this in a second. But first, I want to mention that she literally drugs everyone in this little tiny party so that they won't cry when they talk about Odysseus. I was like, okay, Helen, for what? Literally for what?
She
She's
doesn't
like,
want
nobody's
tears.
gonna
She doesn't
miss.
want tears at the wedding.
I know, but like, what does she give them? Because it doesn't really specify. And she's just like, yeah, she learned from, I think it was the Egyptians or the Spartans. I don't remember who it
I can't
was, but
remember.
she's like, yeah, she learned how to do all this medicine because of all their great doctors. And then, like, some of these will poison you, but like other drugs will just make you feel happy. And I'm like, what did she give them? Like cocaine? I don't, I mean, weed? She's like, here, grow this, plant and you smoke it and you'll be happy. You won't cry anymore. So Helen then talks about how Aphrodite made her go crazy, leave her daughter and her husband, and that Odysseus was the one who came dressed as a beggar to sneak her out of Troy. And I also kind of like the idea that not only do they like blame gods when everything goes wrong, but like Helen totally wanted to leave her husband, and then like obviously the war broke out and that didn't work out in her favor. And then she's like, "Oh, Aphrodite made me do it. It's totally not my fault. Please don't be mad at me, husband." But like she's like low-key kind of trapped in what seems to be a toxic marriage, and she's like protecting herself by being like, "Oh yeah, the goddess made me do it." Like, I mean, I'm not gonna say anything to Menelaus that that's probably not true, but I mean, we all can think it. So then we finally get the mention of the Trojan Horse, and I was very
Ooh.
happy to see it. I was like, yes, let's go. Talk about the Trojan Horse, please.
So it's all like Odysseus' idea, basically, the Trojan
Hmm.
Horse. He's the mastermind behind it.
Yeah, it seems like Odysseus was really the backbone of the Trojan War.
Yeah, kind of like the mortal Achilles.
Hmm. Like, while
Oh,
Achilles was the brawn, he was definitely the brain.
yeah.
Like, yin yang, right?
This is a dumb question, but they were on the same side of the war, right? We were the
Yes.
opposite sides. Okay.
No, they're both, well, like, Achilles was like Odysseus was all there the entire time, whereas basically they had to like rope Achilles to come back
Yeah.
because Odysseus was on the side of Agamemnon. Menelaus tells, man, every time I go to do these names, I'm really messing them up.
Menelaus.
Menelaus tells Telemachus how he was trapped on an island while trying to return home, and tells a story about how a goddess came up to him and told Menelaus that he needed to trap an old god to find out which god was mad at him. And I liked the idea that like there's like a rank system to the gods. So she's like, hey, you gotta, trap a little bit of a higher level god to figure out which one's angry at you. Because I'm not sure, but like I can tell you how to find out. Like that's just very fun for me. So Menelaus is like, all right, solid, I'll do this. Traps the old god and is like, hey, who's angry at me? And the god's like, listen, Zeus is kind of mad because you didn't slaughter 100 cows for him. So what you got to do is you have to go sail all the way back to Egypt, slaughter 100 cows for Zeus, earn his favor, and then you can go home. And he's like, listen, I already passed Egypt. And it's like, it reminds me of like when you're going to try and get gas and, or you're trying to like go to a bathroom on a like road trip and
Hmm.
you're like, can you all wait the 20 miles to get to the next bathroom, or do I need to go back, turn around, and drive 10 minutes up the road to go to that bathroom? And everyone's like, we're not going to make it 20 minutes. Like, you have to get off at this exit and find a bathroom here. And like, that's what I'm imagining right now is that there's like,
Yeah.
we already passed it. And it's like, I don't make the rules, buddy. Like, you have to stop now. So road tripping father is what I'm getting
Yes,
vibes
that is a
from right
really
now.
a good comparison.
Oh, we find out that Agamemnon was killed over dinner. Like he comes home, some guy was like paid to tell Agathis when Agamemnon lands. And then Agamemnon's like, "Oh, this is great. Everyone's here." And Agathis like throws like a dinner party for him. He's like, "Oh, welcome home," and then slaughters him at the dinner party. Like it felt very Red Wedding
Yikes.
in Game of Thrones. I was like, "Okay,
It's brutal. I'm just trying to eat my dinner.
brutal." Yeah, literally. I was like, "That's messed up." Agamemnon spends all this time at war and doesn't even get to find out his wife left him. Instead, just gets straight up murdered.
Brutal.
So then we flash over to seeing the suitors again, and we find out that the suitors just found out that Telemachus has left, and then they're like, okay, you know what? Great idea, great idea. What if we just kill him? And that's what they're like, yeah, we're all gonna kill him. And Penelope finds out that this is our plan, freaks out, it's like bawling her eyes out because she can't do anything. There's like all these suitors in her house. Now they're gonna try and kill her kid. She still thinks her husband's probably alive. So Athena comes and like tries to calm down Penelope, and she's like, listen, this is all gonna work out. Don't even worry about it.
They are damn
And
bad. Like they're so like they're damn bad. They're literally willing to
mhm,
murder for some creature.
yeah. Yeah, they're the worst people ever. Like, I can't wait for them all to just get smited at this
Yeah.
point. So then the suitors are hiding in wait on like a rocky cliff to kill Telemachus when he sails through. And I'm just like, oh, jeez. Like, I want, Ghost Ship to come through and murder all these people before Telemachus even gets there. Straight up messed up. So that's all we have for this episode. I am shaken. I am loving this translation so much.
I feel like that went by so quickly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
It
I'm
really
loving it.
did. Yes. I can't wait to read more of it.
It's
I'm
ending
very
on a good
excited.
cliffhanger too.
Mm-hmm. I know they literally the visual of like all of them lying in wait, and then I was like accidentally was like, okay, that's all we got for this reading, and now I'm like, oh, I want to read more. I'm sure the listeners want to know more if you haven't read this book
Yeah.
yet.
Because
I
now
am very excited.
we've done the first book now. Because as I said, the first four books are just based on
Mm-hmm.
Telemachus. So now in the next few books, we're gonna get more of the Odysseus action and what he's been up to. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. a little teaser, a little, insight of what we're going to talk about next. And I'm leaving you all on a cliffhanger. But yeah, I'm excited to read more of this. I think this translation is really, really good. If you guys want to grab it for yourself, you can head over to barelybookish.com. There is going to be an affiliate link if you want to help support the show and all that fun stuff.
Put it
If
in
you
the
want to buy this book.
description.
Yeah, and that'll be in the description for sure. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I love it. Like doing the last collab was so fun. So I'm really excited to this book because, as we were saying, this book is a lot more eventful. So it should be great.
Yeah, but we'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. If you want to listen to our monthly exclusive episodes over on Patreon, this month we will be talking about The Song of Achilles with Jen from Best Book Club podcast. And that's kind of all we've got really going on right now. If you want to find me, I am at Barely Bookish on literally everything. We also have merch, so please check that out. We have a lot of cute things on there. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got for you guys. So our logo is designed by my little sibling Sarah. Our theme song is by Raphael Crux on freepd.com. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye!